Welcome to the NFL Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast, and it is Thursday night here as we bring you some looks for the Sunday day games of the NFL Divisional Round. So we also have a video up about Saturday's games separate from this one. So make sure you do check that out in time to get those bets in for Saturday. We're going to be looking at Sunday. Like I said, a few bets from each of us, 3 to be exact, with some looks from each of these games. We were looking at a pretty nice record, Nate, a nice little 4-2 last week. So at least helped us make some money. And we're going to keep it going here in the playoffs as we kick it off with your first look for Sunday, Nate.
Josh Allen over 235 passing yards, where you can get it at FanDuel right now. The Raven in this battle of MVPs, you know that the Ravens might be able to just pound the rock, but I don't think the Bills will be able to. I mean, we got a projection of 55 yards for James Cook against the number one pass funnel D, basically. I mean, they're number one in pass defense EPA since week 12 are the Ravens, but they've played, Zappy Boyle, the ghost of the Texans offense, Jalen Hurts, who never throws. They played Russ twice. I know this stuff is kind of adjusted for schedule, but have the Ravens secondary really stepped up in class like this and played a guy like Josh Allen? No, they have not since the first half of the season, when routinely Burrow, Baker, and Allen himself almost, hanging 350, 400 yards on the secondary. Allen himself did not. He had 180 actual yards in that blowout back in week 4, but 320 air yards in that game. And injury core, wide receiver core, very injured, I'm saying here in that game. He was not able to really connect with anybody downfield. Lost Shakir, didn't have Amari Cooper yet. Of course, Kincaid not on track yet. It's just a different offense now where they have so many weapons. He had 8 different receivers in the wild card round. There's no specific guy for the Ravens to key on or deploy like a Marlon Humphrey necessarily to shadow with. He's going to be able to spread the ball around, move the ball. If there's one thing Josh Allen ain't going down easy. So if the Ravens are able to continue doing what they've done, which is lighting up the scoreboard, most effective first half team, then we're going to be in a negative game script. And in a positive game script last week, the Bills ran 41 times last week. Joshy's still 272 on 26 attempts. He averages 272 in the playoffs. And I know it's been down lately with how Joe Brady calls the game, but I'm going to take Joe Brady to make the right adjustments and pass when passing makes sense, and for him to kind of outwit this young DC for Baltimore, Zach Orr.
Yeah, I can see all that. Yeah, Josh Allen's about to be in his bag for sure. You mentioned even the rushing stuff for him. He'll probably have some opportunities there, but I don't know that it'll be eating into to too much of his passing either. And probably will have to be is one of the key points here. He will have to be.
The Ravens are really good limiting rushing QBs. I didn't even hit that. Since week 9, they haven't allowed 30 plus to any QB. They held him to 21 in week 4. So I think their modus is going to be to try to keep him in the pocket and then keep him as a passer and not let him burn them downfield. So that then we're going to see more of those deep shots and more of that 300 air yards that we saw last week.
Yeah, air yards. Interesting. Yeah. Well, let me go ahead and just get right to stay in this game then, actually, with my first pick and talk about his tight end, who I think is going to be a recipient of a good amount of those air yards. He is number 2 in the league still, or at least he was in the regular season. Let's just keep it to the regular season stats, but second in unrealized air yards. As we talked about last week with Dalton, we're just going right back to the well with him. 31.5 receiving yards is the prop here. You still get that at -115 on MGM, and you should be able to watch this on Friday. Shout out the whole producer team, obviously, so that you can make sure you get similar lines. I would imagine 31.5 yards feels great for Dalton. Now it's lower than it was last week, in part because he only got 3 targets, still went over because he is a deep threat, sort of one of those hybrid wide receiver tight end types that we talk about more than he'll be in there for any kind of blocking for this run game, which I don't think we really either of us expect there to be a huge workload for James Cook. And even if there is, probably not the best yards per carry, that type of thing against this Ravens defense. But when you look at Kincaid and the sort of opportunity share, it wasn't quite there last week. I don't know that it needed to be, right. That we talked about this before the show. Like, they were obviously able to build a lead and then run the ball once they got up, especially in the second half there. And that's all they had to do. So that really iced any other opportunities. But you got to predict that, like, if he's getting 3 in limited opportunities in that game, this is going to be a completely reverse. I don't want to just say that's going to be a complete reverse game script. I think the Bills defense has shown that it will help them hang around in the run game for sure. But at any rate, like, I do think that they're even in a neutral game script, this is going to be one of your targets that you're looking at with a really nice A dot as well. He was led the tight ends in this season in deep targets, and he was in the top 10 in A dot. It was mostly just he wasn't available, right? Once again, just a little bit repetitive from last week, but it's the same concept. Like, he's still coming back with a better number than last week, and we should give the Ravens some credit. That would be the other main reason, aside from the fact that he didn't see the volume last week, which might lead you to be worried about it moving forward, which we've established we are not. The Ravens are much better against the pass, and specifically against tight ends over the course of the last half, really the last 7 games of the season, let's say, is when they really up those numbers. But overall on the season, they're still 9th worst in terms of limiting the receiving yards to the tight end. And I do think that with about 5 targets here for Dalton and the deep target that he should be good for more than 31 yards.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. He had 7 targets on 22 routes when they played week 4, because, like, where are you going to try to beat the Ravens? The way they guarded Josh Allen, yeah, it was kind of like rolling out and trying to find his deep target, and he lost Shakir, so he was targeting Kincaid a lot. So, yeah, I'm not worried about the only 3 targets, again, because the Broncos just got absolutely bullied in the second half of that game, and there was no passing happening, and you're just not going to bully the Ravens. You're going to be forced to pass. So, like that. And I'll go with the tight end on the other side, the more receiving tight end, that is Isaiah Likely. This opened at 33.5 yards. If it's 35 or 36 and you feel like you're losing value, I'm fine taking the receptions at plus money, 3.5. I think either one is good. I mean, he was implied when I started looking at this, minus 160 implied to catch at least 3. So that's an implied probability of like 62%. And he averages 11.5 yards per reception. So we're saying it should be 60% for him to go over 33.5. And that's why people started hitting it. Obviously, he had a great game last week, too. And Zay Flowers is trending out. So people are just like, why not? Likely to happen again here, because he logged a season high 22 routes out wide with Flowers out last game. I mean, got the 51 yards despite a 70% rush play rate. The Ravens on their final drive did not pass once. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a more pass heavy script for them, even though, you know, the Bills can be had on the ground at times. I don't think they're going to allow that to happen. I think they're going to continue to play zone, which they played at a high rate, because they have to spy on Lamar. They're probably going to have dedicated linebackers on both Lamar and Henry on every neutral or early down script, and the Ravens are going to have to counter by getting the ball out quick to their tight end, getting into the zone gaps, and Likely's been excellent at doing that. Lamar has a 131 rating when targeting this dude on scramble drills. He gets open, he makes big plays down the field. So I definitely like him, and projected to be a higher scoring game than the last time out. I like him even more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's similar to what we were saying about Kincaid, and it's a little different how he might be getting there with the targets and where he's catching the ball than Kincaid, but the end result often is the same, with a wide receiver-esque ability for Likely after he catches the ball. So let me go to over for a receiving yard here prop as well. We've got 3 in a row here. AJ Brown in that Eagles game, 69.5 receiving yards. Nice. Minus 106 on Caesar right now as we're recording as well. And we're talking about a guy who did this pretty handily in the last matchup between these two teams. 6 for 109 in that matchup. And there was 340 rushing yards as well for the Eagles in that one. And we do expect them to be running a good amount here, but they've got to load the box. Like, if you're Sean McVay, you can't just watch that happen again. You don't have a shot at this thing if they're going to go for more than 300 rushing yards as a squad, Saquon or no Saquon. So if you look at their drop back success rate here in the last half of the season, 25th allowing that to their opponent. They are not able to really get off the field. It's a good reason for their lack of third down percentage here as well on defense. And if you look at AJ Brown, man, I mean, you better be getting him the ball. You're going to hear about it essentially. When he complained earlier in the year, before he and Jalen Hurts, I guess, made up, or maybe they were never fighting, who knows? But he made his point made. And then after that, came back against the Steelers for 8 receptions, 101 yards and a tutty in that one. Then followed that one up against the Commanders, 8 for 97 in that one and a tutty as well. And they definitely stacked the box there against Saquon and their ability to keep that game pretty close. But yeah, they knew that once again, you have to keep him from getting, I don't know, 150 rushing yards if you can get there. I mean, obviously, if they can keep him to like a solid like 80, 85, they'll probably means they're been able to get off the field a bit. But for AJ Brown, like he's going to be that outlet on the side there. If you do like his receiving as much as we're talking about here and think he could actually get closer to 100 than 70 in this game, he's plus 240 on FanDuel to lead the game in most receiving yards, which would basically be a half fade of Puka and just as much support of AJ Brown here. But yeah, Puka's up at nearly 90 yards, right? A little bit more than 90 yards there on his receiving prop at this point. I don't know that either of us plan to touch that against the Eagles pass defense. So that does lead you to like AJ Brown. If you think he can get up there, we do think that it's going to be tough for Stafford and company to pull together a game like last week or the end of the season, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'll still take Puka on an adjusted line probably with some parlays, but I don't think I'm trusting him to get 90 necessarily, and AJ could go that. I mean, yeah, this is a good call because the Rams, what are you going to do? You can't just sit by and play a light box against this team. I'm not sure if they probably were playing a heavy box in week 11 and they still got trucked. But it's got to be like, all right, let's make Jalen Hurts beat us. Like he's not a reliable passer. But when he has really two targets on the outside that he's going to go to, AJ Brown first and foremost. And I don't know if he's a squeaky wheel because he was taking a much more mature, thoughtful approach about it last week when he was just reading a book on the sidelines. But he's clearly understood that he wasn't as big a part of the game plan last week, and he might be this week. So that's fine. Yeah, other people buying that narrative, getting this juiced up to 70-71 as we speak. But yeah, speaking of Puka and the Rams, I'm just going to take Matt Stafford pass attempts, 32.5 over, please. And that's kind of a dual out in the sense that, like, if the Rams are in this game, they're going to be passing because the Eagles' interior T is no joke, man. And if they're not in this game, they're going to be passing till the very end in catch-up mode. But interesting that they barely ran Kyron in the first half last week against the pass funnel Vikings, the number 1 rush D EPA team. And now here come the Eagles, the number 2 rush D EPA and number 1 overall since week 10. Also very good against the pass, as you alluded to. So I don't think Stafford will be able to rip off chunk plays, which is key for just the attempts. But last week, yeah, I mean, he had 21 attempts at the half against Minnesota, and then the game was over. So only 6 attempts in the second half, on pace for basically 42. Last 5 in the playoffs, 37.2 attempts per game for Mr. Stafford, 26 completions. He attempted 36 against Philly in that comeback mode script that we're talking about. And then 4 of the next 6 QBs to face Philly got over this number, including last week. Love had 33 attempts, and he also threw 3 picks, right? And Stafford should be able to manage the ball a little bit better than that and stay on the field. But there's a strong correlation here that if you think the Rams are going to lose, which the line certainly indicates, he's gone under this in 6 straight wins, over it in 3 straight losses, and that includes against the Eagles. And you look at the adjusted yards per attempt, 8.3 in wins, 6.2 in losses. So forced to take more small stuff underneath, more pass attempts, longer drives, and yeah, even though he has a higher completion rate indoors than outdoors, that again, like if you go incomplete on 3 straight and then you're going for it on 4th down, like we're just getting the attempts up right to the end, and you're gonna love watching that kind of script.
I'm going to go to the AFC game here to close us out and take Lamar over 9.5 rushing attempts. And that one, you can still get plus money on DraftKings at plus 105 for that. And if you look at the difference here between just the amount of rushing he gets in the playoffs versus the regular season, he's at 17.6 rushing attempts per game in the 6 playoff games that he's had now in his career, over 120 yards per game as well in those 6. And the last time he played Buffalo in the divisional round in 21, he had 9 for just 34 yards in that one, 17-3 loss in that round to the Bills in that one. But I do think we're going to sort of have the opportunity here to improve upon that. Even though the Bills are running a ton of zone, you've got that zone read option, obviously, for Lamar in that run game with Derrick Henry, which a lot of this is the first half, to be honest, which is awesome, but still be available in the second half. We saw him basically get this close to this in the first half of last week for that exact reason. And I think you basically key in on a similar thing here with the read option, obviously, with Henry. They had a 70% rush play rate in the wild card round, and that's basically their highest of the season. I think you just keep going back to that. We talked about that too, sort of at the end of the season. You saw Lamar in games at the end of the season where they needed to win, started to target his ability to run a bit more because they will lean on that, which we've also just been talking about. I think we more said it relevant to Saturday's picks there, but like we should definitely be looking at these QB rushing numbers when it comes to playoff time, and you know that that's somewhat of a cheat code, and most of the guys left are mobile, right, and can pick up those sort of 5, 6, 7 yard third downs that with their legs, and that really does lead you to a nice yards per carry for these types of guys. And I think you'll see Lamar still needed to get those with his legs as well in this one.
Yeah, Lamar and Jaden Daniels are a cheat code right now, extending drives. I can't believe this number. Yeah, it's plus 110 at MGM still. Like I can't. I'm baffled when you rattle that off. 17 and a half attempts per game in the playoffs for 120 yards. Yeah, because like he trusts his legs more than he trusts his arm, and he doesn't have great weaponry down the field. So it's understandable that he's taken off that many times in previous years. This year it might be a little more controlled with Henry back there, but the read option is what you love to see. It's like as soon as teams are really keying in on Henry, he's going to start putting that ball in his belly and then reading the defensive end, and then you're just at their mercy. And I don't know if the Bills can stop that. I think they're going to do a much better job than the last few opponents the Ravens have seen. But like Lamar, yeah, you got to use that weapon, especially when you don't have Zay Flowers. You don't have many receivers to threaten them with downfield. You got to threaten them with that read option and just get them the attempts. And if they do fall behind and they can't be it, and then they're in a pass heavy game script, like he'll still dance his way for some carries. Like, so I think this is one of the more solid bets of the weekend.
Yeah, it looks like there's a pretty good edge there. So that's all the time we have for you in this one, though. Make sure you are subscribed to that page. Check out the episode we have up for Saturday's games as well, and continue to follow along with us for the rest of this postseason. So until we see you next, happy betting.